Welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Curious podcast presented by Last Night's Game. This week, we are talking about something that so many of you have asked questions about. In fact, our Sports Betting 101 page on our website is the most visited page because you're all wanting to either learn about or talk about the world of sports betting. And therefore, I called in the heavy hitter, the guy who knows all the things about sports betting, my co-founder, my co-host, my fantastic little brother, Scott. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been a long time in the making, getting to share my knowledge of sports betting, not necessarily my success sports betting.
Well, it's luck, right? There's a reason that the saying is luck's a four-letter word.
There's also some four-letter words that come along with betting usually. The end. It makes sense.
As I'm reminded, and I have this in our notes to say too, but there's a reason that people who set these lines get paid a good amount of money to do what they do, because their whole job is to not let you win. That's what happens in casinos. As we say, being from Las Vegas, Vegas wasn't built on winners.
It was not. So this is they've got it down to a science, and it's remarkable how accurate they usually are.
Isn't that crazy?
Predicting the future.
Hey, wasn't your high school baseball coach one of the guys that set lines on games?
In the most Las Vegas story of all time, yes, he was. He was a preeminent line setter in Las Vegas. That is correct.
What's the job called? What would you call that person?
I'm blanking on it right now, but he just set the lines. Yeah.
Set the lines. The guy who set the lines.
Yeah.
Senior executive line setter.
Sure.
Now, I'd be remiss. I'm going to take a totally left-hand turn. If we didn't talk a little bit about the new merch we've added to our store. It has nothing to do with betting, although I would have never betted on this happening. So that's also the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce thing. We have some new merch in our store that our fantastic interns created for In My Football Era, in some red and gold, alluding to a certain team and alluding to a certain singer who might enjoy eras. So if you have a fan, you are a fan of said singer or a fan of said player or their love affair, whatever you want, great holiday gift. In My Football Era.
And it seems like football era is everyone's favorite era, as far as I can tell.
I saw this fantastic clip. It was a little girl dressed in it, like she was like 2, dressed in a cheerleading uniform, a Chiefs cheerleading uniform, and it said something about like every Swiftie, and it was on TikTok. And the little girl's like, she's just slamming her bottle, and she's like, "I'm here for the football," and she's like, "What?" And they're like, "But what's happening?" And she's like, "I don't know." It was very funny. So for those of you, if you're not a football fan, guess what? We also have you covered in Sports 101 on our website. So there you go. We've got you covered from all angles, really. You want to go bet? You want to go learn about football? You want to go learn about F1 racing? Whatever that might be, we've got you. Well,
whatever era you're in.
Yeah. And if for some reason doesn't exist, you send us a note. We'll make it work for you.
That's why we're doing this podcast. So
that's exactly right. And in that lead in, we will stop talking about us and Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, and we will talk a little bit about sports betting. So sports betting is now legal in 30 states, which is pretty incredible. We're going to talk about some scenarios. I'm going to ask you some questions about different kinds of betting. Now, if I'm correct, a lot of these things, spread, money line, over, under, yes, we're going to use them as reference to football, but you can use them in it's football, baseball, all of those sports really do use the same terminology.
They do. Football, basketball usually use the spread. Baseball, the spread is referred to as the run line. And in hockey, it's called the puck line. So it's all kind of the same thing, but it's all referencing the spread.
Okay, awesome. See, then we're learning so much already, right out of the gate. So talk to me about, you talked about the spread. So if I'm going to, I guess, kind of walk me through a scenario, I want to ask you questions about these, but also if I'm walking up to the window at a sports book, or if I'm logging on to DraftKings to place a bet, kind of maybe give me some scenarios too. Like, how would I say that? Because I know I've bet on the Super Bowl before with you. and I kinda, like, feel like I rehearsed my line when I walk up before I get up there. So, talk to me about let's go through maybe some of the scenarios, and you can maybe just give us a little some pointers. Let's talk about the spread.
Okay, we'll start with the spread first. So that is going to be a number set by that individual sports book on how they think the game will end as the final score. So we'll just pick a random game. We've got Cowboys and Eagles, and it looks like right now the Eagles are -3, which means they are favored to win the game by more than 3 points. So that's how that sports book, or that's how Las Vegas sees that game going, that the Eagles will win the game by more than a field goal.
So,
And
question
then
for
you
you.
win.
So, you say that sportsbook chooses. I'm assuming that if you're an MGM property, all of your sportsbooks are probably going to be the same line, but you're saying that, let's say we're talking Vegas and then we're talking DraftKings, they might have 2 different spreads.
You can sometimes find that variation where somebody might have it at 2.5 points, another book might have it at 3.5 points. It's kind of up to them to where they set it to get their
Got
most
it.
beneficial odds on bets they're taking. But if you search hard enough, you can sometimes find a little bit of variation on that number.
Okay. Got it.
And it just kind of
Okay.
depends on what money that individual book is taking.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So now you're talking about I wanna bet the money line. What the heck does that mean?
So money line is a straight up bet on who you think is going to win. So if the Eagles were favored by 3 points, if you were to bet on them, you wouldn't make much money. Your bet won't have the same payout as betting them spread. But if you were to bet the Cowboys at +3, they are underdogs, so you would make more money than taking them with the spread, but they would have to win outright.
Got it. So you're
So
saying favorites aren't going to pay out. If you pick a favorite, it's not likely to pay out as
no,
much. But it
because
does the
it's most likely to win. That's why.
right.
But if you take
Does
the
the
underdog, yeah,
yeah. So the spread doesn't count in this. Money line is just straight up, I pick the Cowboys regardless
correct.
just to win.
They have to
Got it.
win. They can't lose by 3.
Okay. Got it. Okay, and then we talk about the over under.
I mean, over under is one of the favorite bets to make for most bettors. If you don't like either particular team, that's maybe on the Sunday night, Monday night game, and you just want to see point totals. That's usually the way to go. So over, they're setting the number at a certain point. We'll go with 50. If both teams combine to score over 50 points, you win your bet. No problem. You don't care who wins. If you go under 50, if both teams score under 50, you win your bet and you don't care who wins. So it's a good way to watch the game and not necessarily care who the actual outcome.
So what happens if they score exactly 50 points? So it's not over and it's not under.
50 points would be what's called a push, or it's called a void in some sports books. You just get your money back, which is better than a loss. So, I mean, a
True.
push or void is most bettors will take it other rather than losing. So, it's not necessarily a terrible thing, but you
Got it.
obviously want to win.
So here's a question for you. I know that the sports book obviously takes a small cut of
Yes.
each bet. So if I get a I mean, talk to me about that, but then if I get a push, do I lose that percentage or whatever that they take?
So if you're betting the spread or over unders, there's going to be what's called in the sportsbook world the vig or the juice, which is the percentage that the sportsbook makes off that bet if you lose, which is how they make their money. So if we go back to the spread of Eagles -3, the odds on that would be -110, which means you're losing 10 cents for every dollar you bet. So
Okay.
if you wanted to bet $10, you would have to bet $11 total to win $10, if that makes sense.
It
And that's
does,
a
but it
typical
seems
Yeah, so that's a typical number for the spread, and the over/under is -110. So you're losing 10 cents on every dollar you bet.
got it.
$100,
So
you'd have to bet $110 to win $100.
$100. So if it's a push, do I lose that 10 cents on the
You
dollar?
just you get your original stake back. So if you bet $10, you get your $10 back. You get
Okay,
back whatever you
got it.
bet. You don't necessarily lose anything, no.
Got it. You know what's very interesting? There is a bar restaurant that I used to love that we lived down the street from in Phoenix called The Vig, and I never knew why it's called The Vig, and I'm assuming that's why.
It could potentially be that way.
Huh. Things you never
Maybe
knew.
maybe whoever owned that was a bookie, and now you just figured that out.
Maybe there was a lot of illegal sports betting that I didn't even know about.
There you go.
Huh. See, we
Life,
should have paid better
life's
attention.
different now.
If I would have had this podcast back then, I would have known, but
You could
podcasts
have
also didn't exist then.
known you could have gotten in on the illegal action at that point.
Damn it. You know me, I'm such a good bettor that
Yes.
I'll sign me up. Um, let's talk about a teaser. I've heard about these and I have no idea what a teaser is.
So this is just another option the sports books give you
Lose
to
money?
win
Oh.
money, mostly lose money, to be honest. So the more picks you have, obviously the worse odds you have of actually winning. So if you really want to win a bet and want to make money, the slow and easiest way is to do one game at a time. But we live in a culture where there's no patience. People want instant gratification. So a teaser is a form of a parlay, which a parlay is a bet of at least two teams, and then each game has to win for you to win your bet. So obviously, the odds of you winning decrease by every team that you add to your bet.
Mhm.
And then, sorry, we'll go back to the teaser. The teaser gives you the option. So if you had a parlay bet of Eagles +3, Chiefs -7, and Seahawks -2, a teaser will give you an option to move that point spread either like 5 to 7 points either way. So you can mess with it and move maybe the Eagles to -2, or so you can vary in 5 to 7 point ranges. And in the bettor's mind, that helps them with their odds to win that bet because they believe that Vegas or that sportsbook sets the line at a certain number for a reason.
For a reason. So do you have to pick, I wanna give the Eagles more points or less points?
You can do either way.
Okay, so but I have to pick it.
You
It's
can
not just a
slide it, yeah.
variable.
No,
Okay.
and you get to pick the amount of points you want. It can be like 5, 6, 7. So you can
Okay.
increase or decrease. So it's an interesting concept.
It is interesting. So it's worse odds because it's obviously
Different
you're
numbers.
making the odds of you winning easier, which means your odds really get worse in that
Yes,
sense.
and the
Okay,
payouts are not as good as normal parlays.
that's right. Okay, got it. And so
And you're
parlay,
just
I'm
yeah, you're
taking
basically
3
counting on whoever set that number to be
to be
right.
off. Oh,
Yes.
be
Well,
right.
to be
Okay,
right, and then you want to slide the number more in your favor.
got it. Okay, that makes sense. And so parlay, like if I'm walking up to a window,
Mhm.
how am I betting? Talk to me about the betting language if I'm doing some of these bets. So, like, kind of maybe just give me some examples.
Absolutely. Walking up to the betting window can be extremely stressful situation, as
Mhm.
you've seen during Super Bowl week with hundreds of people in line. That's why a lot of people don't even do it anymore. They just lay in bed and do it on their phone. So
Mhm.
it takes a lot of anxiety away from people. But if you were to walk up to the sports book, usually they have numbers associated with each game. So each game is numbered, each team is numbered. So you would give them the number and just say, I want to parlay Giants +3, Buffalo Bills -1.5, and LA Chargers -1.5. And that would be a 3-team parlay. And then you would give them an amount, which we could do $10,
Yep.
and then they would make that parlay for you. And it'd be locked in.
So if I'm walking up and I'm saying I want Giants +2, Steelers -3, what the Patriots +5, then
Yes,
I am betting the spread on those. Is that
correct.
correct?
Yes,
Okay,
and each team would need to cover that number for you to win. If one of them loses, then you lose.
got it.
And
Okay.
that's why sports books love parlays.
Right, sure. And that's why your odds are better though, right? I mean,
Correct. You're,
it
there's inherent risk on your end and less risk on their end because you're probably going to lose.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. Now we hear a lot during the Super Bowl, speaking of, it's prop bets. Now, prop bets you really don't typically see in a traditional Vegas type sports book, but they tend to be on sort of some of the um online entities. And prop bets are sort of those weird bets of things that are not actually not necessarily gameplay. What color is the Gatorade? How long's the anthem going to be? Who's going to win the coin toss? Some of those are all prop bets. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, and for this, for obviously for the Super Bowl, they have way more prop bets available than they do during the normal season, like you said. Anthem and Gatorade, and how many songs is Rihanna going to sing during halftime, or what's her first
Mhm.
song. So they go more in depth for the Super Bowl. During the season, there is prop bets available, but they're usually like over under receiving yards, over under passing touchdowns, and the odds aren't necessarily as crazy as they are during the Super Bowl, but they are available.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
So it's not
Makes
as
sense.
exciting. It's not as exciting during the regular season,
So
unfortunately.
give me a couple of other terms that I might need to know. Like I know we've talked about lay the points and some other things that you and I have spoken about previously when you're trying to teach me all these things. Kind of
Yes.
share some of those so people can speak the language.
Okay. Yeah, we'll start with what you just said. Lay the points, which means you're taking the favorite in the game with the point spread. So, like we spoke about, Eagles -3. You could say I'm going to lay the points with the Eagles, meaning you start the game at a deficit of 3 points, and they have to cover that 3 points for you to win the game. So that's lay the points.
Would I
If that
use that when I bet too? Like would I walk up to the window and say lay the points on Chiefs, Eagles, Cowboys and would I sound really smart?
you could sound very smart saying that. Yes,
Oh, well, noted. When we're in town together for the Super Bowl, we're going to go practice this.
yes. We won't do it on the phone. We'll actually go in a real person setting, which
We're
is
gonna go
odd.
into a real person sweating. I'll be sweating
Yes,
because this is not a comfort zone for me. But it's Super Bowl, so they're used to rookies like said person here,
correct. That's why
doing these
lines
bets.
are longer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why the lines are longer, exactly. What else am I missing, kind of, terminology-wise?
All right. We already covered push, so we don't have to go over
Mhm.
that one. One of the most painful and devastating and sometimes exciting terms is a backdoor cover, which means a team, maybe in a game that might be a blowout, a team might score a late touchdown to cover the spread, or a late touchdown that really doesn't mean anything to cover the spread or to cover the over under. This could also be known as a bad beat, depending on which end of that bet you have.
Bad beat?
Bad beat, yes.
Okay, just checking.
There's a famous segment on Scott Van Pelt, Bad Beats, every week, where you just see a lot of people may not even realize that are watching what's going on, but the people who have bets on that game are either devastated or absolutely elated.
So, like,
So,
you bet the spread, right? You want your team to win by at least 3, let's say that's
yes,
the spread. So, they go in and they score at the very end, maybe your team's getting blown out or whatever. Maybe they're not. So, maybe they go in and they score a touchdown at the end, which isn't gonna make any difference, but it
correct.
moves you into the spread. Does that make sense? Is that
Correct.
right?
If I can give a pretty recent example,
Yes, please.
the Bills Bucks spread was -8.5. The Bucks were down by 14 on one of their last drives. They had their drive extended 3 times on penalties on fourth downs, and then scored a fluke touchdown off a ball went off a guy's helmet and he caught it. And then they went for two and they got the 2 point conversion on a tip ball. So they covered the spread because they only lost by 6.
Which really pissed
And they
people
really
off.
didn't have a chance to win the game. And it was probably the
Makes
most
sense.
fluky touchdown of all time, which
Mhm.
would be a backdoor cover. Or if you had the Bills at -8.5, that would be considered a
Respectable.
bad beat. So,
That makes that makes
yeah.
sense.
Mhm.
Interesting. Okay, in case someone's tuning in and they're finding this podcast not in football season, but around the Kentucky Derby, which we know is
Yes.
a huge, huge betting time. Win, play, show are the words that we hear around the Kentucky Derby about betting on horses and horse betting. Can you really quickly just run the win, play, show? Because to me, it almost is a parlay if we're using football terms that we just learned about for win, play, show.
And sports betting,
It can be.
horse race betting is a whole different world with different terminologies completely. There's no spread. There's no money line. Win, if you're betting on a horse to win, that's just to win. If you're betting on them to place, it's to come in second, and show is to come in third. So a win, place, show bet would be a parlay essentially on the first, second, and third finishers of that race.
So if I'm saying I pick Bodacious to win, play, show, that means I'm sort of hedging my bets that that horse will either come in first, second, or third.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. It's really that's also a fun one that you can lose money on real fast, but it is kind of
Easily.
fun because the odds are sometimes so extreme too, right? 50 to
Yes.
1, some of those things. One question I did want to ask you before we wrap up, I know we're getting close to our time, is in the beginning of the season, you look at the board in a sports book or wherever you are in the newspaper, if people still read newspapers, and it might say the odds of let's say the World Series, right? The odds of the Diamondbacks winning the World Series are 350 to 1.
Yeah.
And so that means if I put $1 on the D-backs in the beginning of this season and they win the World Series, I win $350.
Yes, for every dollar you bet. Correct.
And so those
And
odds will change throughout the season though, right?
yes, those odds they'll be
Okay.
updated throughout the season. Sometimes they'll eventually be taken off the board as you get closer to the end of the
Makes sense.
regular season. But I highly doubt that there were many Diamondbacks betters. And if
Yeah,
somebody told you that they did bet on the Diamondbacks, they're probably lying to you.
they're probably lying, yeah. One more random quick question. So
Yes.
sometimes you see, especially in horse racing, you see these odds of like 36 to 2 or like why is that why that if you can maybe explain a little bit about that?
So horse racing odds are much different than
Okay.
sports betting. And that means they're more of a favorite, so your payouts are really bad.
Okay.
Whenever it's
Got it.
like a 10-2 favorite, it's not good.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Are they ever reversed where it's like you literally will lose money if they win? Or is that kind of that why that 2 that other number's there?
It can get close sometimes.
Got it. Okay.
Well,
So noted.
yeah,
If they're too close to each other, don't bet on that horse.
correct.
Okay.
And
Got it.
let's see.
A
I had
anything else you'd like to share
um I did
besides
place
gamble responsibly?
gamble responsibly, and I did place a future bet that I'd like to discuss if you don't mind.
Please, I don't know anything about this, so please do.
Like you said, future bets where you get pretty good odds on teams. The day the Rangers announced that they were listening to Creed to get them
Mhm.
through the playoff run, I put a future bet on them to win the World Series. So I hope I
Fingers
don't jinx
crossed.
myself.
You were feeling the power of Creed's song "Higher" as the Rangers have.
Yes. So I'm looking to
Okay.
take the payout higher than it would have been. And they were plus 350 at the moment.
Fingers crossed. Okay,
So
everybody, send your good juju. Yeah, I know even if you're a D-backs fan, send your good juju for Scott, just to win his bet, because then we can celebrate it on the podcast
with arms wide open.
with ours. Well done. I think those are the only 2 Creed songs I know, but
There's this podcast could get a lot longer, so let's stop it there.
we'll just stop while we're ahead. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing your betting knowledge with us. If you've listened to this and you want to read it and you want a little more concrete information, check out our Sports Betting 101, which is on our website under Sports 101. It's really resourceful. It's super helpful. There's additional links to other information, but that'll help you because sometimes when you hear it, it doesn't always make sense. I can tell you, I've heard this stuff, and Scott's been teaching me this stuff for a long time, and it's familiar, but it's still sinking in. And so, thanks for listening. Hopefully that helped you with what you want to know. And of course, as we mentioned, if there's something else you want to learn about, let us know. We've done the NFL play calling episode, which is phenomenal if you've never listened to it. Learning about how they call plays in the NFL. That came from a reader question about play calling after watching the show Quarterback. So we are here to help answer your questions and make you feel more fulfilled and more confident in small talk, especially when it involves the world of sports. Thanks for joining us, Scott. Thanks for everybody for
Thank you.
coming.